Okay, first things first. Supervisor Knapp, can you give us a thumbs up if we are audible? Excellent. All right, I'm gonna have to jump around a little bit. I got screens to share tonight. Very good. Okay. All right. So I've got a brief agenda. We've got some updates and then a couple of newer items to go over. All right, so the first update that we'll touch on is pro-housing communities. And again, this is the program right now where communities receive this designation, gets you access to a pipeline of grants. Still up in the air if that access is just preferential treatment for these grant programs, or if you need to be a pro-housing community to access these programs. That's the current pitch. That is not, it's not approved yet. That's part of the budget. So should that go forward, you'll need to be a pro-housing community to get access to one of these 8 grant programs. It's more likely going to be you'll get preferential treatment. It sounds like that's where it's headed. And I do want to give an update on where we are as a county. Let's see if I can switch over. Okay, so this is directly from the state's website. It has not been updated since March 19th, so there might be some communities that aren't reflected in this data yet. But if you'll see throughout the state, 171 communities have submitted letters of intent. 22 have submitted all requirements. Up here in this quadrant, they break it down into regions. So these are the Regional Economic Development Committee regions. That's what REDC stands for. There are 10 of these, and Empire State Development regions follow these as well. This is how the region is, or how the state is divided into economic development areas. So you'll see 23 communities in the capital region, which includes Saratoga County, Albany County, Rensselaer County, us, Washington County, Warren County. So 23 communities have submitted so far. Down here is letters of intent by county. This bar all the way to the right, that's the little Columbia County. That's where we are right now.
Good job.
So just in the region, so here it is by county. So the next closest, I think now are 3. We used to have as many as the rest of the region added up. We're not there anymore. Not that this is a competition. If it was, we'd be crushing the rest of the region, but it's not. So we're doing really well here. There's still obviously some room to go. We've got 9 communities that have submitted so far out of a total of 23 throughout the area. But I got really interested in crunching some numbers on this. So in our economic development region, Mike, you might like this. Columbia County represents 6% of the population of our economic development region and 14% of the municipalities, but 47% of the letters of intent submitted so far.
Wow.
So we're punching well above our weight on this program.
again.
Well, thanks to all of you guys. I mean,
We got 56% of the CFA money last time around.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, on that now balance that we did.
But we don't talk about that. They told me to keep it below the radar. They'll get even with us next time.
So for an update on the land bank, it looks like we'll be having the first board meeting relatively soon. It's on Kelly Baccaro's desk, the county offices. So it'll be getting on the calendar pretty quickly. This month we'll be submitting to Homes and Community Renewal for the non-capital funds. These are operating funds that you can use for insurance, pre-development, pre-acquisition, just cleaning properties, maintaining properties, just anything except for building properties or buying properties. So that should be happening at the end of this month. There hasn't been a new round of land bank funding announced because it's tied up with the budget process. There's still some money left over from the last round of land bank funding. And there's been some talk of establishing a new fund of money for land banks that have been created since that last round of funding was advertised. That's not set in stone yet. But as more land banks join the Land Bank Association, the Land Bank program, you start to create more of a need for land banks to actually access some of these capital funds. So we're keeping an eye on that. Trillium has had some updates. Michelle, do you want to share what Trillium's been up to?
Sure. Not sure I reported last month, but our website is up and running. We've got a beautiful logo. We've incorporated in November. We're almost done with our 501c3 paperwork. Working with an attorney right now on that piece. And we've been doing some more stakeholder meetings. Just had one at the library a couple weeks ago. We'll be doing more over the course of the spring, trying to get to some other towns around the county. And starting to also look at potential sites and doing some kind of building a framework for how to analyze sites that are feasible for development, what are like the rubric for selecting them.
So what do you cover in the stakeholder meetings, and who would you like to have join? Because you've got Copic and Ancrum here, and as you know, Copic, Hillsdale, Ancrum, we have the Rojan committee. We'll be happy to host you for a meeting and discussion.
Yeah, I think we have different goals for different groups of people. So some groups are people who are doing housing work already, right? And it's kind of like, this is what Trillium is, what we're doing, how can we help you guys with your goals, what do you need? Some of it's trying to find more people to join our committees. We definitely need more capacities, so trying to find people who are interested in getting involved. We've been like a working group structure for the past year and a half. Now we're moving, I think it's having some committees that people want to get more involved with, like fundraising or outreach or governance, trying to get some more people involved on that. And then once we kind of do some more of that, we're going to branch more into broader public engagement of trying to find people who are interested in this type of housing, who would potentially be residents and either home buyers or tenants, and learning more about what their needs are and where are they at in the home buying process. We can, as we're also developing sites, we're also developing the resources for people to be ready to be home buyers.
It's kind of been an interesting phenomenon lately. So Trillium is one of, how many are in this program? 14, 13? So it's about a baker's dozen of community land trusts throughout the state that are enrolled in this technical assistance training program through Enterprise Community Partners. Enterprise has been around for a while. They used to administer the land bank program for the state. So they had a grant out last year where we could get technical assistance training. Michelle wrote the grant, we won it. We are one of only 2 CLTs that aren't in the city. There's us and Binghamton. But we're in monthly meetings with these folks, and we've had a bunch of outreach from people that work at the city CLTs who are trying to figure out how they can help up here. In some cases, they're trying to figure out how they can start a different CLTs. We've had those conversations. But then we've just got other people that are just looking to purchase land and potentially donate it into the CLT once the CLT is up and running. So there's already networking happening before it's even a 501c3. Land bank, sorry, I'll go back to a land bank update. 501c3 status is pending. That's been submitted, so we're waiting to hear from that.
So some discussion is the fact that it's a quasi municipal entity that it there's lawyers who say it's not necessary to file one, but it's easier to have one when you're out doing things and people ask for it, to just give them the tax ID number. It's not, they don't prohibit you, but not every land bank gets one. Talk about ADUs yet.
No, right, not yet. I'm actually going to flip these, and I think I'll do ADUs last. The home mobile and manufactured home replacement. So this is one of the grants that will be available likely in June or July of this year, depending on when the budget's finalized. We've had a few conversations with organizations that have received this grant funding before, Rebuilding Together Saratoga Communities, and also the Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services. That was the group, I think it was just the last meeting when I was talking about manufactured home communities. That's the nonprofit that purchased a 138 pad mobile home community and has been upgrading infrastructure and replacing units over the past few years. There is you can get up to 1.4 million for this program. So this is for replacing existing manufactured homes that are in a state of disrepair, and you don't need to own the underlying land. So this can work in communities. And the organizations that we've talked to that have implemented this program before say it's easiest to work in existing communities because you're dealing with extant infrastructure and just your dollar goes a little bit further in those communities. Supervisor Knott has put me in touch with Brad Scott in Stuyvesant. He owns and operates the manufactured home community over there that has been upgrading. That's a really interesting project. If no one's been to Supervisors at Hudson Meadows. Yes, if no one's been to Hudson Meadows, it's a really cool project to check out. You can see very clearly the older version of the park, and a lot of those homes are likely candidates to be replaced. And then the newer modular homes that are being built, which if you look at the core of those homes, they just look like starter homes that you would find in almost any neighborhood. I'm not saying that you choose who's going to receive the grant before you apply for the grant, but it's just nice to know that there's a level of interest coming from at least one of the communities. So this is an area where I think the task force could be really helpful if you've got contacts at any of the professionally managed manufactured home communities in your towns. That's some outreach that can be done there just to get the interest level up. It'll make the application much, much stronger to HDR when this becomes available. Okay, the last grant's the +1 ADU grant. So there will be an announcement on Tuesday, but since we don't meet again for a month, and this is a relatively small gathering, we can say that we've we've been awarded the grant, the full $2 million that we asked for. This is a grant that we partnered with RUPCO on. So this is a partnership between Columbia County and RUPCO. I think everyone's fairly familiar with RUPCO. They've got about 45 years. Currently administering this program for the County of Ulster in the city of Kingston. That's been expanded. If you go, actually, I don't think I have that up. If you go into HDR's website, you'll see all the towns that are participating, and all of Columbia County's towns are currently listed as pending contract approval. We expect that to happen at the end of this month, early May, and then we can really get into the rollout of this. We're talking to RUPCO on Tuesday with their program administrator just to figure out what it looked like in Ulster County, and how we're going to roll it out here. I think they had about a 4-month window between when they heard that they got the award last year and when they opened up the applications. So there was a really brief burst of community outreach that they did, but they had done a lot of legwork on ADUs leading up to this grant application, kind of outside of it. So we'll take a lot of our cues from what they did in Ulster County and tweak it for here, since they're just administering it in Kingston, which is very different, right? Denser developments, got a lot of infrastructure. Getting out to the rural areas is going to be a little bit different. But Ulster County also submitted an application this year to expand to the rural areas. And I think we're the only two areas that are that disparate, right? Most of the other programs are in relatively small, densely packed areas.
Chris, could you just explain the situation with Hudson and Greenport?
Yes.
As it relates to this project?
Right, so of our 23 communities, I believe 18 are participating in this program. One of the requirements was that the preference from HDR was that not only were ADUs allowed, but they were allowed by right in all residential zones. They loosened that a little bit, but they still you had to have it explicitly in your zoning as an allowable use. So if there was just no reference to it, that disqualified you. If you don't have zoning, which is a case in some of our rural areas, that disqualified the area as well. There will be another round of this available, most likely next December or so. So towns that don't currently have ADUs allowed in their zoning, or I should say explicitly allowed in their zoning, could be able to get a bite at the apple if we apply again next year.
Do you know
which towns those are? Definitely agree.
Hudson and Greenport off the top of my head.
No zoning in Greenport.
Village of Valatia. I don't remember the other two.
I talked about Ghent and you had some
Got you
question
in.
about whether.
Yeah, again, we got in.
I think at our anchor meeting, a couple of representatives from Taconic and Gallatin showed up, and I think each of those towns
Taconic didn't yet.
doesn't yet.
Yes, that supervisor, but all of these towns are aware that ADUs are something that they want to be pursued. They're aware of ADUs and some of them are very clearly pursuing it.
The zoning code, maybe one chapter, ADUs.
Yeah. That's it. I know Supervisor Scott and Taconic, it's something that they're talking about at Taconic. I know it's on Hudson's radar. Not sure about Gallatin or, Greenport. I'm not sure. I've not spoken to that supervisor about this program yet.
It's a big deal, and from two perspectives. One, Chris deserves a lot of credit for this kind of was released in the middle of the holiday season. And we discussed it on New Year's Eve. We want to thank the Board of Supervisors who allowed us to present it to them, and they introduced a resolution at their organizational meeting on January 2nd, because it required Board of Supervisors resolution to be able to apply, as the grant is in the name of the county. And without Chris finding it and the cooperative relationship with the supervisors, we would not have been able to submit the application 10 days later. And so it was, and secondly, I think we've all been looking for an opportunity to work with RUPCO. And whether that leads to additional opportunities or, the Rojan group that had representatives from RUPCO up several times. And I truly believe that when you have an opportunity to work with people, then you build the trust and confidence and demonstrate the collaborative ability to get other things done. And in addition, I guess the last piece is that when the people who are giving out the money at DHCR see that, we're the highest percentage of towns participating, we're just was awarded a grant for $2 million. You become part of the inner circle on the radar, and that means that we just have to keep up the fight and keep up the focus and continue to find opportunities. This is just one tool in the toolkit, but as a first step with the land and with getting the land bank at the same time, demonstrates the work that all of you are doing to guide and direct the Board of Supervisors task force. So I want to congratulate Chris and thank the supervisors and thank all of you for your guidance and support.
Good job, Chris.
Great, yeah.
That's exciting.
We're wrapping you up. So what are you doing for us next?
Manufacturing home life. I want to get to Supervisor Collins has had his hand up for a
Oh,
bit.
sure.
I'll only be a disappointment, but Chris, I wanted to thank you and commend you for pushing that +1 application forward. That's terrific. I'm glad we got it. The only thing is, did I overhear that a town with no zoning was disqualified? Because it sounds to me like a town with no zoning would support ADUs on every square foot of that municipality if it didn't regulate them.
Yeah, support and allow, right? It's kind of there. I think that's where HDR was hanging their hat. So they would prefer that your support was at least memorialized.
Explicit.
Yeah.
Well, when you say prefer, it's mandate.
It's mandated.
Right.
I don't like to have state and mandate in the same sentence. People get feelings about that.
Before we move on, there was some conversation at the last meeting about the criteria qualifications for people who were issued a grant. So can we talk about how that process is going to get resolved?
Yes, let me pull it up. So again, we're not going to copy all of their work, but just as an example. Oops, excuse me, it's on the wrong page. Okay, so this says Ulster County plus it's RUPCO's website, right? So in any town in Ulster County that's participating in the program, if you go to that town's website and you click the link, it all goes to this page. So it's going to go to RUPCO's. Ours, I'm sure, will be the same. And down here, you can see they're actually a little bit ahead of the game. One interesting thing is that their AMI is kind of significantly higher than ours. It's about 10% higher than our counties across all household sizes. So they've created this map. There are a lot of things that they're doing that we've talked about in our committees, and this is an interesting one. This just came up in our, I think, outreach committee. They've divided the map of the county into 4 distinct areas. They've got north, west, south, and then just the city of Kingston by itself. They're capping the awards per these regions. So the highest, these applications for this program will be scored. And we'll figure out what the scoring criteria is with RUPCO. I'm sure it's going to be very similar to what they've already created. And we have some question of, do we want to spread these? Do we want to, focus in an area? Do we want it to be entirely merit-based? It seems that they've split the difference. So the top scoring 3 to 4 applications in each of these regions will be the awardees. So after they award 4 to a region, that region will be cut off, and then they'll just go, it obviously won't be linear like that, but that's how they're doing that. So it's both merit-based and then also geographically dispersed. You have to excuse me if there are any questions online. I'm not going to be able to see them until I get done with the little spiel here. So here they go through a quick narrative about how the scoring system is going to work. So the project narrative is basically just the homeowner writes a story about why they want an ADU, how they're going to use it. They describe the project, talk about their own need. Then you start to get into infrastructure questions. We'll probably be able to skip the projects that are located near public transportation section of this. And then they have additional affordability, which is something that we talked about. So they go pretty deep. The state had no requirement about the affordability level of the ADU that's created through this program. There's just an affordability requirement on the part of the homeowners who are participating. Ulster County decided they wanted to make this a little more geared towards affordable housing, which we're doing as well. So they give extra points towards applicants who are shooting for these income thresholds. And they go down from 80% to 60% to 30%. You get additional points if your rental unit will be targeting those income levels.
Oh, wow.
Dan, I feel like I'm not answering your exact question.
You're getting closer.
Maybe if I keep scrolling.
Yeah.
I think it's a chart you put together for the chairman, press release.
So here are some of the questions that are going to be really pertinent when you're putting your application together. Do you have utilities on your lot? You assume you do. Where are they? What are they? What's the zoning in your area? Is this allowed by right? Do you need a special use permit? What's your budget? So again, from a high level view, this grant award is $2 million. You peel some of that off for admin. What it looks like you end up getting is about 14 units, 14 homeowners who each receive $125,000. That's likely not enough to finance the construction of an ADU. So there will need to be some private financing. And that's the, what is your budget side? And then how are you going to use and manage your ADU kind of goes back up to the project narrative. And this just gets into what are ADUs and what can they look like? But this is a good example. This is from AARP's. AARP actually produces a tremendous amount of really good research about ADUs specifically, which is not that surprising since a lot of their constituents want to live in ADUs or could live in ADUs. So these are just some of the different development types. You've got detached by itself, attached, which is, wing in the house, above a garage, which is the Fonzie model, which gets referenced constantly. I'm guilty of that as well. Interior lower level is your basement ADU. Interior upper level is typically an attic ADU. And you've got garage conversion where you just turn the entire garage into an ADU. I'm not sure that they've done their scoring criteria a preference for the above garage conversions, things like that. Feels to me like if you do conversions, and you can use this to rehabilitate existing ADUs that you aren't using as well. My sense is that if you're doing conversions and rehabs, they'll be cheaper than new builds, and you might be able to squeeze 1 or 2 extra units into the program, but we're not quite there yet.
The problem I see is Chris gave us a chart about what is the 100% of AMI in the county.
Oh, yeah.
Based on the number of people. And when you look at the fact that you can't be above that, depending on how many people in your household, I don't know how you make up the difference between the 100,000 that you could get under this grant and the cost of doing the unit.
That's always the problem with the state program.
And so what we have looked at in Ulster County, was it?
It's back to Ulster.
The bank I'm on the board of. but we don't service Columbia County. They are doing a low interest loan program, as part of their, Community Reinvestment Act obligations or requirements so that, how are you going to maintain the home that you already have on $100,000 of income, in terms of mortgage and taxes and other expenses, and get a loan for $50,000 more so that you can match up to the grant and get 150 to do the unit. So, I mean, it's, we want to find a way to do that, but it is a program that sometimes when you look at it, I'm not sure how it's going to work. And you don't want to put people in the position of faking the applications or the reporting, so that they can.
Do we have a line on how we might do that in Columbia County?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, again, because the governor's announcing it on Tuesday, we're not even supposed to be talking about it yet. And so I do think that we're gonna have to figure out, I don't know if you have that chart, but.
Yeah, the affordability chart.
But, this was.
Hang on, let me stop sharing because it's in an email and I don't know what else is in it.
It was very interesting. I can just read it if it's easier for you.
I can pull it up.
It kind of goes with affordability chart we did. Based on your income, based on taxes, insurance, and electric and other household expenses, what price home you could afford. And if you were at the $80,000 median income, it was $150,000, and there aren't any. We just saw 12 units in Troy were just constructed, and half of them are rented at $240,000 a unit. They're townhouses, I think 6 in a building, but that's the lowest I've seen of any new build in the region. We monitor from Warren and Washington to Ulster, Dutchess on what people are building, and then we have a list of those developers and
Bristol people.
So.
Here.
Yes.
I think it's a reimbursement grant too, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So you have to go upfront the 100,000.
So, but the idea of, we just had a call, we received a $300,000 grant from the state to do micro enterprise grants for existing businesses and new businesses up to $25,000. They're learning from our questions about how does this really work? And they're starting to make improvements to the program. And that's what I see here. When you show them that, where do you get the money to get started and.
Yeah,
reimbursement.
I think the state had the program backwards. I honestly think that the program would have worked better had there not been income limits on the homeowner, but they put income limits on the tenant.
Yeah.
Because then, exactly, the homeowner can afford it. They're getting a subsidy, not because they're poor, they're getting a subsidy because the cost of the housing they're providing to someone low income or moderate income is more than they can get from it. So that will, yeah.
Yeah, so there's,
We hope we can.
there are challenges here, but let's take the money and figure out how to.
Right, yeah.
Somebody.
Yeah, I will say, on the demand side of this, the first week or first 2 weeks that Ulster County opened applications, they got 70 applications and they knew that they could only do 14 projects.
Have they got anybody who they know is qualified?
Yeah, they're
Have
done.
they kind of gone through it?
I mean, well, they're not done, but all the applications have been approved and they're already in the process.
Well, I mean, I guess studying something like that to see how it made sense there would help us.
Right, well, that's why we felt partnering with Rupco,
Right.
where we actually don't even get a big. We
Right.
just felt,
It would be interesting to know from them how many of the applicants took advantage of the 20 extra points for each income
Right.
level.
Yeah, how many approved applications went for the 60 or the 30? How many of them are conversions? How many of them are rehabs? How many of them are new builds? That's all information that they
And
really
that
don't.
extra 20 started at 80%, right? So if you didn't
Yes.
do 80, you could do 100 of AMI, 30% of
I don't think
100%.
I don't think there would be an upper limit. I think it would just be 30% of whatever, right? just to not housing cost burden. So if you were electing to not income restrict your unit, I mean, you're probably not gonna get chosen, right? Because you're not likely to not be one of the most competitive applications in that region of the county.
But we can get them to do that. It was difficult to ask them to do a lot until they knew we were gonna get the grant partner,
Right.
but, and they do get, what's the fee? It's $17,000 a unit,
Yeah, it's not, or 12.5.
12.5.
Yeah.
And, but there's coaching, there's the application, there's overseeing the contracting. I mean, it's stuff we don't have the capacity to do in-house. We thought about taking, 10%, 1,700 a unit, but I said at a certain point,
Yeah.
go to the professionals, we're just providing the pass-through.
Yeah,
Chris, the numbers you just had up on the screen are just AMI, right?
that's right.
Do you have the housing, that the affordability levels that are associated with those incomes?
Oh, what is,
The rents and the purchase prices?
hang on. Well, purchase prices, yes.
You do, I mean, counting taxes and insurance.
Yes.
Is there-
Do you have that, do you have that chart?
Do you have that chart?
Right now, you guys are really putting me through
This is a little
putting me
test.
through my paces today. I do, and I was just playing with it earlier today.
Our network
because-
is down, we can't get to it.
Well, no, I was playing with it earlier today because I was looking at those shorty homes that Mike sent me.
You're the one who's getting them into trouble, too. You better go kick that network down.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot, I might not have saved it. Rule of thumb is if you take your income level and multiply it by 0.28, that gets you to your affordable monthly level. That's rent or mortgage, that's just
Right.
housing cost, right?
Right.
Because that gets you to 30%. And so if you take 100,000 divided by 12 and then divide that or multiply that by 0.3, somehow that all works out to taking the 100,000 and multiplying it by 0.3.
Check your email,
Did it
I
work?
just sent it.
Oh, thank you.
No, that's
No.
not quite right.
It's
Right.
1, 2, 3. It's, I can't remember I don't remember what the exact number
Well,
is.
you're looking for 80% of,
Well, yeah, if
Well,
you
start
want,
with-
30% times 80% times.
Right.
Right.
But then you gotta figure, then when you figure out what the total monthly affordable payment is, you gotta whack it up among real estate taxes, insurance, and your monthly housing payment, depending on what interest rates are and
And
depending
here-
on what your
here's-
down payment
No,
is.
because this
Here's
is
what we did,
for the purpose
internally.
of rentals.
Yes, this is a
I
homeownership chart.
can, we can send you this.
yeah, this one's home ownership. Yeah, do a little bigger for folks.
The home program only helps you build an ADU that's going to become a
That's a
rental, right?
rental, that's,
Correct.
yeah, that's a rental, yeah, this is something else.
So what we did here is, we took the cost of a home, down payment at 10%.
Uh-huh.
Mortgage, 90% of the cost of the home. We did 30 years, 7.5%. Then we included real estate taxes at $25 a thousand, which is consistent with what most of the area is. Insurance, utilities, internet, phone, and miscellaneous expense.
How much per thousand? I'm sorry.
$25 a
20.
thousand.
Yeah.
We can get this for you.
Yeah, and your 7.5% monthly payment, that's a constant, right? That's principal and interest.
And so what ends up happening, if the cost of the home is $166,000, based on using 25% of your income for housing, you needed $140,000 of income. And for 30%, you needed 117. And then as you went up, we went up as high as $388,000 for a house. And we upped proportionately the expenses, thinking that you had a bigger house and more utilities. You needed $220,000 of income. And we're a county with $80,000 of household income.
I thought, detail though, under the sort of the usual Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac underwriting standards, utilities and the miscellaneous aren't netted out.
Well,
It's just
yeah,
mortgage,
that's
insurance
true
taxes.
for- That's true for that, but
Uh-huh.
for the reality of what you need to be able to have keep the lights on, we
Yeah.
made this chart a little.
Uh-huh. But it does make the numbers really daunting.
Well, if you take that out, it means you have to you have a little less,
Yeah,
but then when you go to pay the electric bill,
You just paid out of a greater
The problem
percentage
is
of your
that,
income.
I mean, we're already at what, 48% of the population is housing cost burden?
Yeah.
So, I mean, even at 30%, there aren't many deals like that to be had, so.
This was not a chart we planned to present
Yeah.
publicly.
Yeah,
It's also worth pointing out that if you go to the far right on cost of home, you're still about $30,000 below the current median home sales price.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was just a report, this is nationwide, so this is a bit of a digression, but there was just a report that it was on CNN. It listed the states that you need to have the highest income in to be able to purchase a median home sale or median priced home. We were number 8. It was something that you needed $146,000 a year to afford the state average, which is pretty close to Columbia County's average.
And then on top of all of that, you've got to convince a seller to sell you a house for 10% down with a marginally qualified candidate. And that's, if you're not buying that from an entity that.
Because if you have,
Right.
if you have $100,000
Like this.
two-person median income, household income, you don't have savings,
I mean,
you don't have.
Talk to a real estate attorney now, their deals are 50% down or more.
It'll be interesting, and there was some recent real estate news world with the abolition of the 6% sellers commission. So that's off the table. That will likely result in moderately lower home sales prices if it's not a game changer.
There'll be a way to.
I'm sure it's a game changer for realtors. It's not really a game changer for the housing
If that was true, Chris, there wouldn't.
especially if a buyer ends up then having to compensate a broker separately.
Yeah,
That's
that's,
another out-of-pocket.
If that was
cash
true,
that-
they wouldn't be having all these certification courses to be buyer brokers. And I'm kidding,
Yeah.
well, I want to say a couple things on that point, if you guys don't mind. 6% was never a mandated anything. Commissions are always negotiable.
Yep.
And I don't think there are many realtors in Columbia County taking 6%.
No, they're taking more.
No, they're taking less, 5.
No, east side of the county, the eastern side. I know, I had a property for sale. I had to do one for probate. I'm just telling you what my experience has been in shopping for realtors.
Mhm.
I've probably had 7 different realtors in Columbia County in the last 18 years, and the market doesn't change much. So
And they wanted more than 6%?
I've seen different, yeah, I've seen at least 6, and and you can say because it's commercial, I guess, they want higher for commercial because of the Mount Washington house, which I had on the market for a long time. And they definitely wanted more than 6.
Yeah, I've only been in this for about 3.5 years now, and I thought I'd be getting, I thought I'd start with 6. I have a couple of times gotten 6% as a listing agent, but it's more like 5.5 has become the norm, I think, lately, at least in the firm that I work
We're
with.
talking $1,000 difference, right? I mean, $100,000.
But here's the challenge we in the industry are afraid of, because, I personally think, if people can continue to negotiate the commissions, I think it would be perfectly fine if they come down. The challenge is we're dealing with homeowners that already can't afford to get into the market. And if sellers are no longer compensating the buyer's agent the way we have traditionally, I'm afraid it's going to make it that much harder for the buyers we're talking to get into the housing market. They don't have enough money now, so
And they
they're
don't
gonna
have,
pay.
they haven't had the experience and exposure to do it themselves.
Yeah, so if they have to pay 2% of the house's price to their buyer's agent, I'm not sure how many of our folks are gonna be able to afford that. That's my personal big concern.
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
quite happy to sort of make less money, but I'm concerned about the buyers that we're trying to work with.
Yeah, Dennis, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to the requirements for the property owners that would qualify, and
Yes.
which requirements are coming from the state versus which ones are coming from the county in Ulster County. For example, the income cap, is that coming from the state or from the county?
On the homeowner side,
Right.
that's part of the state program. I believe the only thing that Ulster County did that varies from what HCR rolled out as their program were the income limits on the ADU rental. I think that's the only thing that Ulster County.
Is any of that negotiable with the state? I mean, do they take into account what debts people have or what assets people have?
Oh, yes, there will be an income and asset verification process for anyone that applies. But I don't know that, I can tell you that the state is, well, I don't want to speak for the state, but I think it would be unlikely for the state to be open to elevating the allowable homeowner income. Just, I mean, you apply for the grant under the terms of the grant application process. So I don't think they're going to increase that limit.
But perhaps we can discuss it for future grants. I mean, perhaps we can take some evidence from who applies this time.
I think most state grant programs, so this is brand new, right? This is the second round of a brand new program. What's happening in Kingston right now is part of the first round. So they haven't even gone through a full grant cycle yet. So there's typically a feedback loop for newer grant programs. So they figure out how it works. They get feedback from both the folks running the program and the folks participating in the program as applicants. So as an iterative process, you might see changes. We've already seen changes from round 1 to round 2. Technically, Ulster County shouldn't have been able to apply again. That's how this program was written by the state. But they decided that it made the most sense for the county to run the program for the rural towns. The towns didn't have the knowledge infrastructure. There just wasn't enough resources at the town level to administer the program. So they allowed the county to apply again. So in an iterative process, I think you'll see those things change.
So Chris,
it's quite often that, I'm sorry, it's quite often that property has more than one household on the property, yet the property owner, that's the income that's going to be looked at. So for example, if a retired couple owns the property, and they're looking to build the unit, then the property owner's income will be the one that is looked at?
Yeah, and so I'll double check this, but I believe that the properties involved can only be single family homes on a lot, and then the only other building would be the ADU. So if there are multiple homes on a lot, that wouldn't qualify for the program. But I will double check that.
And multiple properties on the lot might actually run you afoul of the zoning.
It's pretty atypical to have, more than one principal dwelling. Rob, did you have a question?
Wow, I think that got me
I
there.
mean, I just kind of back of the envelope numbers, the rental qualification amounts aren't terrible. If you built an ADU with $125,000 worth of grant money, a single person renting 80% of AMI, 30% housing would be $1,400. That's doable, I think, for a person, a single person.
Mike, you ran the numbers on this just on the day, just kind of similarly on the back of the napkin. If you were to finance, so say it cost like $250,000 to build it, if you finance the balance, what would you charge?
I think we took, we did it at 100, 150, 200.
Yeah.
And so now if I'm the owner and I just did the model that you did, where we're just going to use the grant money to build out the unit, 1,400. But if you start I don't have in my mind the factor as to every $10,000 you add towards the construction costs, how much more, well, it would probably be another $100.
$100 basically.
Yeah, 1.24 or 0.124. So now if it's 50,000, 150,000, is it 117 or something? What's the grant?
After the admin, you'll get 112.5.
112.5.
Yeah.
So, if you put 40 more in it, now you're talking 18 or 1900, but it's still less than you're going to find.
No, I think the rentals would end up being a good number. The problem I think you're going to run into is there aren't a lot of folks who are, if it's a 2 or a 3 or a 4 person household and they're making, 3 people, top income would be 92.7. They're going to have a harder time if they've already got a mortgage on the house saying, hey, bank, I need another 75 on top of the 112.
And some of the idea here originally was you'd fix this up and you'd move into that and you'd, either rent the house or sell that, you have to have equity in your house to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess to bring this up in a task force context, so the task force is really going to be, to me, the front line on this as we roll this out. We talked a little bit in outreach about what the staging of this will look like, what the sequence of events, actual public events. And also they just did a kickoff event. They talked about what the program was going to be, and then the next week they opened up for applications. But they had also done a year and a half of legwork throughout the towns about what are ADUs? Here's how you incentivize ADUs in your towns. So that legwork was already done. I think there's going to be a little bit more work for us to do. And I think it makes sense for that to be done somewhat regionally. Instead of having 18 different meetings in the towns and villages that are participating in this, we just figure out what are good regional collector sites, and maybe do one meeting each of those regional collector sites, and that's it. Just the meeting. Here's what this thing is. We're already starting to receive a lot of emails and phone calls from both supervisors and just residents who have, supervisors, because I told the supervisors that we won the board, but from residents who have been to the website, who have been tracking this, who have been interested. They've seen, it's only been up for 2 days that our towns are now a part of the program. And I've received a dozen emails over those 2 days from people wondering how they can apply.
Right.
But it's going to be a bit. There'll probably be about, most likely August or September is when we'll be able to start receiving applications.
Does an ADU have to be permitted in order to apply?
Permitted.
In other words, do you have to have an approved application for an
No.
ADU in order
No.
to apply for the grant?
No, because this takes you, the grant covers all stages of this. So design, engineering, permitting, site plan review, all of that is paid for by the grant.
And if you go halfway through and you get to the permit and the town says, no, you can't do what you want to do, what happens?
That's a great question. I hope we never have to find out.
Yeah.
But I'll see if anyone's encountered that. And again, Ulster County is not the only community that's running this, but it's the only community that Rucco is running this for. So that's kind of where we go with all the questions. And that's a good one to bring up next week when I talk to.
Well, how many commercial construction projects are under contract pending site plan review and approval? And you just do something similar. You're the lucky recipient, assuming you get all your, your permits and approvals. Otherwise, down the next list.
Yeah.
Right, to different end.
Which I think is partly why, as of right, under zoning makes it important. If you can avoid, all you have to do is really comply with setbacks and septic and well and access. Easier.
That's optimistic, but appreciate it.
Yeah, that was the very strong part.
Even though the town with
Chris
their
is-
zoning.
Yeah, is there,
Planning boards.
for people who are gonna do standalones rather than part of
Just
it,
a detached ADU.
just a detached ADU, are there prefab ADUs out there in the market that we can aggregate at least links to or resources for people to be able to look at and buy them? As a way to,
Yeah, so one of the things that's an interesting topic, because one of the things they did down there was they ran, as part of this, part of the marketing, but also just part of the program, an ADU design competition. So they set aside a certain amount of money and they had architects come in and they picked the best, 5 that they liked. But they were just running it through one municipality's building department, right? So the building department, one place could just sign off and say, these 5 are fine in the city of Kingston. Since we're doing it in 18 towns and villages, that's a lot of different land use ordinance, a lot of different building codes. But there are definitely, I think that there's enough overlap that we could find some prefab ones that are already done. Or to find a modular business that it's not necessarily prefab, but they could build it somewhat on spec.
Connex boxes.
What's that?
There's Connex boxes.
The
Shipping
boxes.
containers.
The shipping
Yeah,
containers. If somebody wants to do a shipping container.
They
that's
stack them on
awesome.
top of each other. Go down to North Second Street.
Yeah.
Look at the one by Sacred Heart. They stack them on top of each
I
other.
think it makes a good case for kind of laying the groundwork with town boards and planning boards when this is getting rolled out. So that, they kind of understand this path, we're trying to help solve the affordable housing project, and we can't have too many stumbling blocks along the way or it falls flat.
Yeah, this
And that's
is,
really gonna take some,
from the time we sign the contract, we've got 2 years to spend all this money. So it's, it's a 2-year program. And then there's a potential that we, again, could apply again if some of the towns and villages in the city that aren't currently participating, if they change their zoning in time. When the next one's
Did you
released.
say we could do some municipal agreement, or is that's what?
That's the land bank, yeah. That was an interest, what Mike was referring to, as I found out, so we'll go back to land bank for a second. the land bank is attached, all land banks are attached to a foreclosing governmental unit. So in our case, it's the county. The county has, the authority to foreclose on properties. Within the county, though, the city of Hudson is also its own foreclosing governmental unit. You can't, the county land bank wouldn't be able to hold property in the city of Hudson, but it can finance projects in the city of Hudson if those projects align with the land bank's mission. So even though the land bank doesn't include Hudson, it can still help Hudson projects.
And we're still attempting to ride out what will be the role of the land bank post Tyler. The case that basically what the state says, I think the funding is going to come from the state.
Yeah. All right, does anybody have any more questions?
Good news is that Adam Zarenko, who ran the Albany Land Bank from its inception and was the president of the New York State Land Bank Association, and who first came down to talk to us about it 7 years ago. He was just appointed assistant deputy for housing in the governor's office. So they'll find a solution for land banks.
There are a few ideas out there. They're percolating. Then they'll, it's all part of the budget season.
And our goal was to have one. Is there only 3 or 4 left?
There are, 3 left now.
If something came out really good that made other people wanting to have one, and you had to compete for them, when I was told, why would you want to get a land bank when you don't know what the future of a land bank is? I said, well, that's the best time to get one. I was fearful that, the floodgates would go and, how many land banks are there?
29.
Yeah, so there's 62 counties. I mean, you're not gonna have one in the 5-county metropolitan area, but.
And some of those land banks are just an individual city in a given county. Like the Troy Land Bank is just the city of Troy. Schenectady Land Bank is 2 towns, but still, it's just 2 areas of a county.
Any reason they couldn't expand that number at the state?
They can, but
They can.
they did it once. But I don't remember, Assembly Member Barrett explained to me why they were holding them at a tight rein. I don't remember what it was.
If we're onto new business, anything interesting going on in the budget process about housing? What,
The state budget?
state budget, yeah.
So we're in one house budget part of the year, right? So the governor releases her proposed budget, and then the Senate, the legislature, comes out with their own budgets. One of them is pretty interesting. So an additional $50 million for land banks and community land trusts, and we don't know how that's going to be split up. If that happens, it'll be the first time there was state level funding for community land trusts since 2019. CEDC, the Small Rental Development Initiative, which is something that rural communities should pay a lot of attention to, that can fund development projects as few as 4 units, and most of the state programs don't start until 20. It looks like that's going to be funded again, not at the level that some folks would like to see, but it's still going to be funded. I think it's going to be $7 million is the proposed average between the 2 budgets right now. And then there are some things about 421A in the city, not necessarily terribly applicable to what we're doing here. The city does have some interesting ideas, though. There's a new housing, like a version of a housing authority that they're pitching down there, so, social housing that they're pitching. That's interesting to look at. Maybe I'll circulate that or talk about. Again, that's something that's very New York City focused. I'm not sure where they are with budget negotiations.
The Focus just sent me an email that said wage disputes and tenant protection stall Albany housing deal. And the issue is if the if the state puts this program together where they're the developer of the housing, you're gonna have Bacon Davis issues, and it's gonna be $40 or $50 an hour.
Is that email from this week? Because I feel like that email could have come at any time in the past year or so.
It's April 4th, because as you know, the deadline was Monday, and they haven't passed the deadline. And, it's embarrassing for the governor not to have the budget passed on time, so they're trying to wrap it up this week. But as you point out, until they have the 3 o'clock in the morning, I forget what they call it, a big something, where you don't know what's going to be in it till it's over. As an example, we got a call from the Connect All office yesterday that the downstate legislators have slipped into the assembly budget bill that only the $288 million for municipal infrastructure broadband can only be used to serve underserved and unserved addresses, not to build excess capacity. And the governor wanted to build excess capacity so that in communities where there was only one provider, they'd have competition. But the idea of doing that upstate, where with all due respect to each of our towns, most towns the only full-time employees in most towns are in the highway department. And to think that you're going to run your own municipal broadband operation. And there was a town in southern tier, town of Nichols. They spent $7.5 million to build a municipal system to serve 800 people, but they've only got 250 of them who signed up because the people like Spectrum better. And so, with 280 million and the maximum grant was 330 million, it's going to work in places like Erie County, looking for 30 million to build 400 miles of broadband, but it's not going to work in the small counties. We're down to 600 addresses. We started with over 5,700. The big issue is that
600 without broadband?
Yeah. Well, there's a little more than that aren't finished. I mean, where the providers have gotten pole licenses and are working with DOT to get access, or the 120 addresses that are in Copake and New Lebanon that we believe we have USDA grant funding for. But the big issue is half of the addresses that are unserved in the county are more than 300 feet from the road, and the state doesn't count them. They count them as unserved because the provider only is required to bring it 300 feet off the road, and then the owner has to bring it the rest of the way. And I'm sure we've all heard of neighbors or friends who had to pay 10 grand to get broadband. Well, it's because they didn't have a conduit when they built their house, and now they're in a situation where I don't know if you can.
There's some conduit for $10,000.
Yeah, well, you've seen that, you've heard these stories.
That's magic conduit.
I remember I had to build a power line once, and I got the contractor had the same union members as National Grid, and he gave me a price half of what National Grid wanted. And I said, "This is the same guy you hired in an emergency." When they jack up the prices to their when you're buying it through the provider, it's very expensive.
So I'll leave with this one last thing that I just found out about. This just came out today, maybe about 2 hours before the meeting. There's a new coalition. So there's something called Power Forward Communities. So this was an EPA grant that went to a coalition of 5 organizations. It's $2 billion. One of those organizations is Enterprise, which I mentioned before. Another one is LISC, the Local Initiative Support Corporation. We used to run the zombie program for New York State about zombie properties. Another one's United Way, Habitat, I forget the 5th one. But it's $2 billion to go towards housing, climate resilience, sustainable building, and also broadband. And it's specifically geared towards rural and tribal areas that have been traditionally disinvested. We do have pockets of those throughout the county. I think the city would qualify for all of this. And we do also have some distressed areas throughout the county that would qualify for this. That's something to keep an eye on. Pretty big pot of money, and it seems like the uses are pretty broad. All right, that's all I've got, folks. Maybe I can announce another grant next month. We'll see.
This is like to bring up something.
Yes, sir. Oh, yes. There's 2 things to bring up, actually.
Yeah, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Bill Fisher, and I am the Fair Housing Officer for Columbia County. And I just wanted to mention here at this forum that we will be having a landlord tenants rights forum coming up on Wednesday, April the 10th. That is between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. The last half hour will be dedicated to a Q&A. And so I'd like to invite everybody here if you'd like to attend. We have what we have on the program. We have a sitting judge, Judge Connor will be there. We have the attorney advocate from the Office for the Aging, she will be there. I think Chris, hopefully you can make it and give us a little bit of insight on what goes on here. We also have an insurance agent coming to discuss the importance of renters insurance as far as tenants are concerned. We get a lot of calls sometimes where there may be some damage to buildings and the owners are covered, but the tenants may not be covered for their personal property, so we'll have a representative there. We will have a representative from the Board of Health to talk about safety issues. We're going to also have someone from the fire department that will be talking about the importance of safety in the house as far as fire possibilities are concerned. So you're welcome to come.
Are these details on a website somewhere, or do I have to, because I didn't get all the notes down about what it was.
Okay, well, we do have a fair housing website.
Columbia County Fair Housing?
Columbia County Fair Housing website.
Okay.
Now, I'm the fair housing officer and I am assisted by a fair housing advisory board. These are all volunteers. And so it is the housing advisory board that is putting on this form, and we've been working on it. And so it is going to be at the Central Firehouse in Hudson. They are located at North 7th Street here in Hudson, and it will be between 6 and 8 p.m. And so, anyone who'd like to attend, you're certainly welcome to do that. So
77 North 7th Street.
The other invitation is very short notice, but if anybody would like to attend, it's Copig's birthday party tonight, 7 p.m.
7 p.m., right.
Copig Town Hall.
I haven't heard it called that. I heard it's the first town meeting reenactment tonight.
Yes. So it's at the
In honor
beginning
of the 200th birthday of Copig, which is today.
Yeah, no, I
It's the
think it's
first
for
town meeting,
Saturday.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And today is the first day of a week of festivities?
A year, it's like a whole.
I think,
It's
it's like
perfect
several
rollout.
months
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right, great.
Festivities, uh-huh.
I hope there are t-shirts, because I already got Stuyvesant's t-shirt. So
And
I want to collect them all.
It's a t-shirt,
It's-
and there's a great hat too,
Excellent.
a great baseball cap.
I'll give out those.
if Supervisor Knott is still on,
Yes.
I'd like to, I did reach out to the venue in the Commerce Park, and unfortunately, we couldn't get that venue because there is training sessions going on that during that period of time. So I just wanted to mention.
All right, very good. As long as you know it's there.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks,
I'm
Chris.
just gonna stop recording.
Oh, very nice meeting you. Nice to meet you.